No. Well, on the, which ones you're talking about? For LC, yeah.
Green.
For
You got
green,
39.
there's 39, and for,
And then what is this here?
for LCI, there's,
There's LPI, there's only 16,
16, yep.
17. Yeah. Okay. Call the meeting to order. Public comments relative to agenda items. Okay. Approval of minutes of August 24th, 2023. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Are there any additions or deletions? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstention. I'm sorry. Abstention. Let's see. Item 4, presentation from staff regarding 2023 RFI-01 submittal of green development and VOW ASA.
This one's-
Was important.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Scott Jellison, CEO at the MDC. So green development is, this is like half of the technology that we've been, talking about, gasification, pyrolysis. Pyrolysis is the first part of the process, and it creates, quote, charcoal. And there's some of the pilots across the country, like the plant in Plainfield, they basically take construction debris, wood and those kinds of things, and they turn it into charcoal, right? So that's what this proposal is. So we thought it would be important to listen to them because it's part of the process. It's not the whole process, but it is part of the process. So we just asked a bunch of questions. We know little about, what they do, but it was just, we thought it would be a good, just information for the committee on just hearing, someone who does just the pyrolysis piece. And from my understanding, Green is really more of a solar company. VOW is the company that does the pyrolysis. So, basically just very basic questions, just gathering information. Not much to, obviously the one thing is, where are you operating? That's probably the most important. Commercially operating, where are you operating in the U.S. or?
Actually, there's nothing in the U.S. Is there? It's supposed it's European. And on board ship.
Yeah.
Isn't that a ship technology that they use it in much smaller basis?
I don't know.
Who's that's on board ship that they're using. Why don't you guys sit up at the
Yeah,
table?
you guys can sit up here at the front. One of the things that this is interesting, and Deep will weigh in on this. I don't know if Deep's on the phone, but one thing that we have learned about gasification pyrolysis is there's a black tar that is a byproduct or residual waste from the process, and they kind of talk about it here. So we need to know more about that. We need to understand, what do you do to get rid of it? How much, do you produce based on a ton of either MSW or sludge? What is the byproduct, and how do you get rid of it? And so that's kind of a similar issue with gasification pyrolysis, but we really haven't gotten that far. So,
but aren't they? They're using a mixture to get to the solid, aren't they? They're using that green. I don't know what green biomass is being mixed with the sludge? You asked that question.
So just,
That's to get
Yeah,
it from
so-
solid to.
so
to
so in this term we've asked these questions on the CTEC proposal, and this is very confusing. And we tried to clarify it, and we'll clarify it today. There's a significant difference between biomass and biosolid. Biosolid is human waste by regulation. CTEC and others use biomass, the term biomass, in their literature because it's not human waste. It's not regulated human waste. It's stuff. It's biomass could be plastics, medical waste. It could be, as CTEC said, arms and legs from medical waste. But it's not human sludge. So, we're really just kind of going to listen to them as to what they do, how they do it, and how does that educate us more on the pyrolysis component of pyrolysis gasification.
Isn't pyrolysis the absence of oxygen in the process?
Right.
Yeah,
And gasification has oxygen in it, but not as much as when they put that together. So
yeah. I mean, the whole concept, and that's why pyrolysis gasification would say it's not incineration. Deep would argue that it's not technically incineration, but it is, you are burning, combusting, incinerating stuff without oxygen. So it's a process that does it
isn't
without
it
oxygen.
molecular?
Yeah.
More molecular than the open flame, obviously.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Drake, what are these guys, considering they're local, which to me is a real advantage to doing what we want to do. What's the big difference between them and CTEC, other than CTEC probably has a lot more experience? I didn't really jump out at me. Is CTEC's equipment much different than this? I'm not sure if
I don't
the
know.
details.
I don't
mean, that's
know.
the question I think we need to answer some of this.
Well,
Because again, they're out of Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Which to me, it's better to have a relationship with someone in Rhode Island than it would be far away. Not to say it's the end of the world, but
well,
Yeah.
Rhode Island Green is an implementer. They're going to build something for you. They're using someone else's technology.
no, I know, I understand, but they're still in Rhode Island.
Yeah, I
They have it,
understand,
which
but-
is, you have a problem, you call somebody in Rhode Island. You're not calling somebody in, whatever. But
Yeah, and you got to remember if you look at in our white paper, and we utilized EPA's Federal Register, we identified all these. There's only a few projects that are piloted right now in the United States, and we mentioned one of them, which is in California, which is just pyrolysis. And then there was one in Schenectady, New York, and that was pyrolysis and gasification. That was what was the history there, Tom, about where is that still operational?
No, that was a brief duration pilot that we didn't have anything to do with, but our understanding was it didn't really end very well. They were never able to achieve any kind of consistent or continued operations. And they've shuttered the pilot, and the last that we heard, they were going to, take the lessons learned and modify their technology. I do not know what that means, but that was the one. I think we had talked before that Stanford
Is that
has a process where they make
No, it's
pellets,
Schenectady, New York.
and they were going to try and deliver their pellets to this process. When the Stanford folks went to see the site, they, out of safety concerns of how this pilot was operating, they would not enter the building and chose not to participate because there were some significant safety concerns surrounding this pilot piece of equipment. And like I said, it has since shuttered, and it's, they're not operational.
Wasn't there one in New Jersey that they were doing, that there was a township that was doing?
Yeah, there have been several different pilots around the country. Some of them, were called out by EPA and the Federal Register. I don't know the status of those, and typically the pilots are not intended to run full scale. They're trying to see, it's like at the experimental stage, like, does it work? Coming out of the test tube in the lab, and it's, a little bit bigger, but they're not full scale typical production units because they're trying to see if it works. And I think the one in Schenectady, they had a lot of issues. So I don't think they achieved the goal of proving that it worked.
So as far as we're aware from EPA, from NEPA, NUIPIC, there were two pilots were in the United States. One is in California. It was operational. I don't know if it still is. And this one in Schenectady. So it's going to be interesting to hear from these people as to, where are you operational? It really comes down to these basic questions. Show me, where are you operational?
Right, we want to see something that works.
Yeah.
From Missouri, I understand
You're right.
the issue on even the technology relative to solid waste.
Yeah.
That CTEC comes
Sure.
back in as a piece of what they're doing now. They have some kind of a relationship according to what they're writing. I don't know.
Yeah.
And that supposedly is an operation in 4 to 6 locations in the world. Most of them are in Europe. I think it was France and Germany that they have those. That's a solid waste piece where they use, I believe they use the CTEC piece in the back end of it to destroy whatever's left over or to reduce it down to a sand for cement and things of that nature. So, but they are operating in the hospital waste and things of that nature where they're using it and developing temperatures, according to what they say. What happened with the CTEC, all the questions? Did they answer all the questions?
Do you want to jump on that or do
No,
you
no,
want to finish?
I'm just asking.
Yes, yeah,
Because
so,
right here, you don't seem to have a lot of, you're asking questions of them. They're not going to be coming back to us.
yeah, no, John, just emailed this to everybody, about to email it, and we have a
Just
hard
got
copy. So what I did for CTEC was, as we talked at the last meeting, there were 78 questions, whatever the number was, 80 something questions. So what I did was I just simply highlighted the questions. Why don't we get everybody a copy before we start talking about it?
I think everyone here.
Oh,
I
okay.
think they've been
Okay.
just put on our desk.
So I just simply highlighted the questions that we were looking for clarification from. So if you look at the example, I've identified number 7. So I've clearly identified the question and their answer. And then I've added, the rationale for asking another question, clarification question. So in the bold, you can see there are 2 additional questions. And really it comes down to, the issue with CTEC comes down to, we simply, tell us where you're operational. The video, we referenced the video that we sent out to everyone. That was a project that was started, and I think the video was in 2020. It said it was going to be operational. So the simple question is it operational? Can we have some information regarding that? They do have a third-party emissions company that was on their presentation. If they could provide, certification that the emissions data is from that facility, that'd be great. The other question is number 7. I didn't realize this. I was looking for it, but if you look at number 7, the question is, has CTEC done a carbon footprint calculations surrounding the entire process? Their answer is yes. Please refer to Oxford Hospital report attached. If you click on that, there's a report. I've read the report. In my opinion, the report is a proposal to the Oxford Hospital, not an actual emissions report. So my question is this a proposal, or do you actually have the CTEC equipment operational there? I don't know. So that's a question.
Those are
Just
we're waiting for those questions to come back.
no, this is the questions I've
But
asked,
you
Bill,
got
right here.
questions subsequent to what they said. Is that?
No. Their response was they provided us with a
That's what I'm
report,
saying.
and reading the report, it looks to me like it's a proposal to install CTEC units at this Oxford Hospital unit, which serves a number of different facilities at the hospital. So it doesn't appear to me, maybe I'm wrong, it doesn't appear that it's actually test results of emissions of CTEC equipment operating at this hospital. So that's a question.
Okay.
And that's basically the question. The other thing is, which CTEC's proposal makes it a little difficult because CTEC provides us with a proposal for MSW and then mixing other biomass with it, like sludge, medical waste, those kinds of things. But then they shift off onto providing us with a proposal to replace our MHIs. So it's kind of confusing because we're mixing and matching different quantities and different quote mixtures or recipes. So trying to fine tune and clarify where this proposal starts and this one ends. The thing that I did raise in again, the majority of the technical data that was provided by CTEC and they just did a NEBRA conference last 2 Fridays ago, which I've asked about. The majority of the conversations with CTEC and the technology is you need to have like 75% plastics. And I think in one case they told us a couple years ago, mix it with 60% wood chips, but more plastics, more dried product, percentage wise, ratio wise to the human sludge. And now they're the complete opposite. They're saying we're providing 2 to 1 or more ratios of human sludge. And that's what they identify in the NEBRA conference last week. So we're really confused. Like when they were here, they told us they were not processing anywhere in the 40 locations just human sludge. They mentioned that across the world they're processing MSW and there's some portion of human sludge that's coming into the mixture, but they don't know how much. So we're asking that question. Tell us where, if you're proposing to burn the majority of human sludge and 25% plastics, then tell us where that is. Tell us where you're doing that and provide us with the emissions data certified by their third party so that we understand but we're just trying to separate the two proposals within their one proposal. The other thing is they did mention in their proposal a number of questions about staffing. They said that they can, in their proposal for the heat recovery, getting rid of our MHIs, they say in their proposal they only need 3 staff. So they identified a savings about $4.5 million in staffing. So for 50 employees. So in other words, we lay off 50 employees. And I reiterate, and it's mainly for the board to understand. Remember what happened with CRA. We had 86 employees in 2012. We laid all of them off. Technically, we laid them all off. By union contract, we had to rehire. We didn't have to, but if we didn't, 46 of them had bumping rights. And if they bumped in, so you got a non-skilled worker at the trash plant, bumping skilled craft workers at the MDC, and that would have created chaos. And we couldn't afford that. So we absorbed those 46 employees. And those 46 employees, we couldn't afford it. So we paid for it. We capitalized. We put them in capital projects across the district. And that cost us about $5 million a year, capitalized. And we just recently, probably in the last couple of years, finally got rid of all of those CIP positions that we had brought over from 2012. So my point is, if their proposal associated with replacing the MHIs, they only need 3 employees, and we have to lay off 50, we don't save 4.5 million. That same problem exists. We can't lay off 50 employees. So we just gotta understand what they're proposing.
Well,
That's all. It's just more clarification of what, you know, in the video, if you look at the video of 2020, Mr. Burns, is it Mike Burns?
Burns is the.
Burns, he indicates that that plant was going to be up and running and they were going to have 40 to 50 people working there. And in this proposal, they're saying they only need 3 people to replace our MHIs. We're just trying to clarify that, like what is the proposal? How does that work? So again, where are you working, operating, performing? If you're proposing to do this, which is to burn all of our sludge, then tell us where you're doing that within the world and give us the emissions data that goes with it. If you're burning MSW with MYT, and tell us where that is. And so we can verify that. That's all. That's really, that's all the questions. Again, there's one technical question here, which again is, do you have the slide that came from NEBRA? The attachment?
I don't see Nebra in here.
Yeah, there's, sorry. Tom, can you send it to Myrtle and to John and to Julie Price?
Maybe we should meet with Nebra and let's see what they're saying.
So they're,
Here it is, right here.
yeah, but it's in the question, but there's a slide that we use from their presentation. I wish we, yeah, if you could put it up on that screen, that'd be great.
Well, before we get into this, let's try to wrap up what you're doing with, let's get
Yeah.
this out of the way.
Yep, let's get, yep.
Let's stay on the agenda of green.
So Green, we're
Because
okay
you
with that?
ask a lot of questions and let's see what's our response, what the board response is.
Yep.
Or the committee's response. The 39 questions that are
Yep.
here. And just reading them, obviously, they're good questions.
Yeah, again, it's really similar questions to what we're asking CTEC. You know, because obviously it's half of the process, but it's basically the same. One thing that is important in both green proposal, LCI, and CTEC. And we, Tom will talk about the pilot in Schenectady. One of the biggest challenges for this technology is CTEC says, LCI would say, Green would say, everyone says, and they're right. In order for their system to work, the product that they're burning, incinerating, gasifying, has to be 90% dry. So the trick is getting it to 90% dry, right? Our product that we process is 78% wet, right? So the trick is, how do you get it dry? And one of the problems they had in Schenectady was actually getting the product, the sewer, the sludge dried. That was the biggest problem with that pilot. That's the problem that they had with Stanford. What happened with Stanford was they got and built a pelletizer. They built the system to dry it, to pelletize it, but then the gasification piece didn't work. So now they're left with pellets and they don't have any place for it. And that's why they were trying to get into that Schenectady program to get rid of their pellets, because they're shipping it across the country. So that's the biggest challenge, is drying the product. So one of our questions to Green and to LCI, same question to CTEC, is tell us how you dry it. How much energy, how much CO2, how much, what the air permitting is. How do you dry it to the point where you can burn it at 90% dry? So that's a big technical question. It applies to really all 3 of these proposals. And it's really like, tell us how you do it.
Well, then we should have another discussion with them. My understanding is the way they dry it is it's a significant differential in the heat that they generate. And a portion of that heat is taken off. And now I don't understand whether it's taken off up front or it's taken off in the heat recovery system, because they claim that they make an enormous amount of electricity.
But
though
who
you
the,
can't
who the
use the
bill?
CTEC.
Oh, CTEC, yeah,
You can't use the heat twice, I would think,
right.
if you're taking it off for heat recovery.
Well, if
That's
you,
what I didn't understand when they made the decision. The question you raised, they said that they had enough heat from the process to dry the front end of it, but then they're taking out what? 404, almost 440, 430 million BTU hours, aren't they? Not BTUs, what's it, thermal hours, whatever it is. And at the back end to generate all the electricity that they're claiming.
do you have that slide? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's there's questions here, right? In CTEC's proposal, we asked this question numerous times and
That's it.
and
That's
and
usually-
CTEC answered it at the end. They said it's like here's the analogy. You got a brand new car, you buy a brand new car, and they tell you that the car runs on, you don't need gas, it just runs itself. But you got to get it started first, right? So how much gas do you got to put in the car so that it runs long enough to create its own gas, right? Basically, that's exactly what
Yeah,
CTEC
they
is
say
saying.
it's a canister.
So if you look at this, CTEC told us that they would only need 200 kilograms of propane to start up the
Start,
units,
right.
right? So 200 kilograms, 2.2 pounds per kilogram. If you look at this, and it's far away, and I had it, I don't have it in front of me, but if you look at this process, this thermal process, this is what they presented at NEBRA 2 Fridays ago. This thermal process generates 8 megawatts of thermal power, right? It's only producing 1 megawatt of electricity, so it needs more than 80% of the power that it's generating to pre-dry. So if you look at their slide, this is their slide, they need 6 megawatts of the 8 megawatts of thermal energy to pre-dry. Now, this is only for about half of
The wet.
this is only about a half the size of our system, right? So they're burning, this is 5,000 kilograms at the 78% mixture. We're at, that's about 9 tons per hour. We're burning 20 tons per hour. So if this was applied to MDC, you double these numbers, right? So if you just simply look at, if you need 6 megawatts of thermal energy to dry half of our load, I will guarantee you that 200 kilograms of propane is not going to start up the system, right? Because 6 megawatts is not too.
Once you started, you started. Do you really care about that? Is that big a deal?
Once it's
Yeah.
started though,
200,
No, I-
200,
makes sense. That's
200 kilograms is a 440 pound tank of propane. So that's a small tank.
Yeah, but once you start, don't you just run this for days? Wouldn't you run this for days and days?
Yeah, but what I'm saying to you is, it's a question, right? I don't know. I'm asking a question. The question is, they're telling us for half of the load
Right.
that they need 6 megawatts of thermal energy to preheat, so to pre-dry. So tell us that that's 6 megawatts. If we're double that, I'm assuming that's 12 megawatts, right? I don't know, Commissioner. It's
well,
a
those are
question.
questions we should be asking
Yeah,
them and follow
right.
up.
Yep, and we did.
And Scott, I think it's important to note on this information that we just received from CTEC, this includes a mixture with plastic
Right.
or other biomass tires. So this is kind of, again, like we're saying, there's been so many different mixtures proposed to us, it's hard to quite understand. But this one is sludge pellets with plastic tires or biomass, which we aren't sure how they.
Was that better or worse? I would think that'd be worse.
Well, I think it just indicates that it's not just doing sludge, that you're going to be taking some other product and mixing it in at a fairly significant ratio.
But I hate to interrupt, but Deep isn't gonna allow us to do that.
I don't know. Well, all I know is we're trying,
Speculating on what they're saying, but
we're
let's-
trying to figure it out, right?
Let's ask them the question. That's what we should be
The
doing.
one thing that we did ask, I think Commissioner Bush asked, and we've asked is, where are you burning this kind of, and their answer is in 40 plants. They're not. So if the answer is they're not, then they're not, this is
They wouldn't be able
schematic,
to-
right? They're
they
not.
wouldn't be able to bring a product. that would
Exactly.
do it.
So we're just asking, tell us where you're doing this. If this is what you're proposing, tell us, show us the plant that you're actually doing this at.
Well, my understanding, the last time we saw them, we didn't have, they had no, the last time at least I talked to them, they had no procedure for solid waste, municipal solid waste. They've got that in this proposal they came to us with. Do they not? As I read it, that's what I was interpreting. And it can do so much, 120,000 tons a year, the unit that they had that was operating with their technology at the back end of it, not the front end of it. So, I mean, it was different than what was told to us initially.
Yeah.
And I guess those are the questions that we have to ask them as they put those two models together. Because they did not develop this solid waste process. They either bought it or bought into it, or they have some relationship because they're claiming that that's part of their bag of tricks at this point in time. And as a result, we should clarify that in terms of, because the solid waste issue, when you look at the solid waste piece, it's pretty impressive on how they've got it up. And if they've got 8 or 6 plants someplace in the world, which they did.
They said 40. There's 40 plants.
No, not the solid waste there is. There's 6, I believe. At least the way, that's what.
Yeah,
and they
they've
had
identified.
locations. France and I believe Germany.
Yeah, they've identified 40. Mr. Harrison had identified at the meeting that they have 40 plants across the world. We're simply asking,
Okay,
tell
show
us
us where they are.
tell us where they are that meets what you're proposing and the mixture you're proposing. Tell us where that plant is. Give us certification that it exists and that your third-party emissions company can verify that the emissions that are coming out of that plant is what it is, whatever that is. And I think that'll solve a lot of problems, but there's a little confusion on our part.
What also they're claiming is that they're further down the road in Farmington in terms of dealing with their people. Maybe we should reach out to Farmington and talk to them. They're claiming, that's what
Yeah.
he said in the last presentation that he had.
Actually, we did get a question from Ms. Judy Allen on that. John, can you read that? Which one? Did you add that in?
It's in the middle.
Okay.
No.
So, yeah, so.
Well, I mean, they're not far away from us.
Right, yeah, no, I think
Let's
Commissioner
go-
Salemi
let's-
suggested that we talk to
Yeah.
other people. And I think Ms. Judy Allen asked that question, what is happening at the Farmington level?
Well, if I remember
Can you read
correctly.
her question so that everybody knows
Yeah,
what it is?
it's, given your misrepresentation a few years ago that MDC was engaged with CTEC in a pilot program, please provide details of what planning is taking place with Farmington. Are you actually designing a project with Farmington? And the second question, you mentioned that other municipalities have expressed interest. Please provide details of where you are in discussions with those towns. Are there any municipalities who've decided not to move forward with CTEC? What reasons did they give for their decision? You mentioned once a municipality has expressed interest that DEEP would meet with you and look at regulations that might apply. What have been the outcomes of such meetings? And the last one is regarding EPA's findings of gasification is not incineration. What are the emissions from your technology, even though EPA might not regulate them?
Okay, so I mean, they're at some point in time with Farmington, and I believe they claim that they're much further down the road on a pilot there than they were with us, obviously.
They said they had an agreement with Farmington. I don't,
Did they say an agreement?
yeah,
I think they said a letter of
A
intent.
letter of
Yeah,
intent,
yeah.
okay, but that's not an agreement, an MOU. Or something of that nature, if they had that,
but
I
if,
don't know.
I have no problem, reaching out to Farmington, have them
Yeah.
come in. I don't know if,
I don't know if they'll do it.
they'll do that, but,
Why don't you do that? Why don't you
Yeah.
contact they were talking about using it for both solid waste and for,
Tom,
Uh,
do you know the guy at Farmington that runs the wastewater treatment plant?
We process their solids, so we have a worker.
Did you reach out to him?
Yeah, I have talked with him.
Okay,
About this as well, and I did invite them to participate during, listen in on the CTEC presentation. My understanding, the last time I spoke with the superintendent a few weeks ago, the town attorney had registered some concerns regarding permitting. And they wanted to resolve any deep permitting issues before they did anything. So at that time, I don't believe they were actually doing any work. They were trying to resolve the permitting concerns that the town attorney had about the CTEC proposal to put this equipment in. So
so.
things could have changed, but that was the last update I had about
So
2 or
if
3
that's
weeks
the
ago.
case, Tom, they obviously are having serious discussions if their lawyers are looking at some kind of a proposal.
Well, I think much like we expressed, and engaged deep, you have to understand the permitting, you don't want to spend effort on an engineering effort if deep says no.
No, I don't.
And I think that's why we're trying to resolve
that's
that
not the
question
issue.
first.
That's not the issue. I'm saying that they are much further ahead of us, anything we're doing. If they're at that stage talking about air permitting and the lawyers are asking questions, there's got to be some significant interest there.
I don't know that. So
No, but I'm just saying, that's why we should reach out to them and find out.
we're happy to do that.
I would assume they're probably dealing with the town manager over there, not just the engineering people or the public works people. If they're at that point where they're looking at that kind of documentation,
yeah,
I don't know what it is.
yeah, I don't know who they are engaged with. I've just had conversations
wanna-
with the
wanna
plant
keep-
Yeah,
superintendent.
I'll reach out to him
Sure.
and,
And let's see.
Again, I don't know if I understand this deep stuff, but it's pretty clear to me. Farmington can do what they want, but she said, we want separation before we get to this, which would mean the answer would be no. And they, assuming they asked the same question, right?
they're not gonna say no
Okay, but
until you actually do something,
You
right?
gotta go.
So you have to go through the process.
Right, you have to wait my
But
point.
Tom's saying, you don't wanna spend a bunch of money if you think,
But especially if you already know the answer ahead
right.
of time.
And if you look at the letter that we provided you a copy of it, it was a letter, because we had engaged with CTEC 2 years ago. And we had a meeting with Deep. They wrote us a letter. They tell you what you have to, what's the process. They're not gonna tell you no. They're gonna say, you've gotta do all this stuff.
She said
And
that in
then,
the
and then
letter
you,
right
and
here.
then we'll, right? So,
I don't say-
so I would bet, that, and I think we asked the question, I do think Deep is looking for the state is looking for a solution for MSW. I do think that we would be successful in getting and pushing a permit
No.
for MSW. I don't know that, but I would bet, but I do think that as soon as you start mixing biosolids, which is a whole different animal, different permitting process. You start mixing biosolids and MSW together, you're going to have a much bigger challenge through the permitting process. But I think again that it's really tough to have this conversation without really hearing from any one of these three technologies and tell us, Commissioner, you're in business, right? You only go in business to make money. You wouldn't go in business if you don't make money. You don't make money, you sell a business. So where is my simple question is, if developers can make money with this or any other technology, why isn't there one in the United States? Right? There's none in the United States. So why? So the question becomes, tell me, show me where this is operational as you're proposing it. It's not technology that's being used for something else and you're proposing to use it for something else. Show me where you're burning MSW and or human sludge at the quantities that we're talking about somewhere in the world.
That'd be the only thing. So that would be pretty tough to do in my mind. I mean.
What's
I
that?
mean, as a committee, we're trying to look 10 years out or something like that. I mean, that's the whole goal.
That would be difficult if they're claiming that I believe if we can get this information up, they're claiming that there's 6 existing facilities.
Yeah, but I'm kind of thinking.
Solid waste.
I'm kind of thinking there is maybe little pieces, but I don't want to be like negative on something
Yeah,
because
just-
they don't necessarily have it because the guy who's gonna do this is gonna be a big boy in this industry. And I think we're a big boy and maybe we gotta look, that's where we need to be looking at something that, I don't want to say I want to gamble it, but the idea that you're gonna find all these plants everywhere, that where we want to go, I don't think you're gonna see it. I know you want to see it, but I just don't think you're gonna be able to see it.
Well,
Yeah.
let them say that.
Yeah.
Dennis,
Right, I
okay?
agree with you there. They should say it. We think we can do it, we could prove it, but we don't have it. I mean, but there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Right. There's nothing wrong with that. That's
not
what the whole
that's not
concept
what they're
is.
saying, at least on solid waste.
I agree with you, yeah.
Okay, whether it's human waste is a different issue. That's which Scott raises that question, isn't raised before.
The good thing about solid waste, MSW, is you don't have the drying issue. If you look at, in our white paper, we identified, just using our example of 75% water, human sludge, it would cost about $3.5 million of propane, of gas to dry that, right? And same thing as, and Stanford has very similar numbers. MSW is relatively dry. So you don't have that problem. Yes, you do have, but now you get into the issues with
Vast majority
with
solid.
deep, and they want the separation, which helps. So you're separating, you're taking out some of that wet product, food waste and those kinds of things, and you are left with a drier product, the plastics. And so maybe the gasification can work as if you have that, if you fine tune the feedstock,
Yeah.
right? We just asking, show me where.
Yeah, and that's good, but I don't think there's anybody in this room would think that we're all of a sudden gonna take, it's a module technology, and we're gonna buy 20 units and tear down what we have. It would be some kind of a simulation, if it did make sense, that would have to be worked in over a period of time, no matter what you did. I mean, we aren't gonna close down the multi-hearth incineration process we have in 6 months or a year or 2 years or even 3 years. If you took on them, but this is a module issue that you could do a module, maybe you do it in one of the other, one of our other facilities. If it worked, but you wouldn't buy 330 units and say, okay, we're going to put them all in and we're going to run it and we're going to tear down what we have. It would be some kind of a process. Whereas the solid waste deal would be, we can build something and we have it. It's processed 135,000 tons a year. That's what,
Oh, 340,000.
no, I think it's 135,000 or 119,000 is the unit that they're showing in here.
Oh, okay.
That's the unit. Now, does that make sense? What did Hartford say? Hartford said, we're not opposed to a solid waste facility in the South Meadows, but we're opposed to 1 million tons a year that we have there now, because it just doesn't make sense from an environmental standpoint. There's no technology that's going to operate that way. They tried it, 8 years ago, and they couldn't get anything together. Now, if they can process 121,000 tons a year, that's actually enough to accommodate probably all the MDC towns in Hartford.
Yeah.
Why does that make sense in the South Meadows? Because right now, when you look at what they were processing, they were going directly into the plant. I believe East Hartford and Weathersfield were going directly into the plant, which meant there was no transportation costs other than what was being dropped off there. Because once you have to go to a transfer station, now you increase your costs significantly because you got to transfer more of that to it. So if you could get even 4 of our 8-member towns that are dropping it off directly as they collect it, they come in and drop it off. That makes a big change in the number they're showing without transportation from a broader base, at least in the one I read here, was something like they're $76 or $78 a ton. be $78 to $80. That's significantly cheaper than what we're paying now to ship it. What are we shipping? We got to be up to 130, at least 32 by now. We're into a second year of shipping. I think at the end of the 5-year cycle, there was somewhere between 149 and 156 a ton. So that's almost a 100% increase in what we're looking at. Now, again, that makes more sense as a larger facility that you could, if it makes sense, if there's some place where that's operating like that. I'm not saying I know that that's the case, but they're claiming, and they show you pictures of how it operates and how they come in and what they do. And Scott's right. Okay, tell us where that plant is. Let's just
Yeah.
start there.
Yeah.
And say, okay, you do have that facility. Because when they talked to us originally, they had nothing in solid waste. They never talked
Right.
about solid, municipal solid waste. Now they are because of this. So I think there's a lot more questions that
Yeah.
have to be asked.
And
you're
I
right.
think, I think that the key for me would be the video from 2020. The equipment's there.
But didn't they
It's-
have a video that they showed us?
No,
Oh, they did?
but the video's there, the equipment's there. And so, and Mr. Burns had indicated that they would be up and running shortly. So bring us back there, right? Show us that equipment running operational. Show us the emissions associated with it, or anywhere else that you can, the important part of this is the mixture is really important, right? You can't compare apples and oranges. You can't compare, I'm proposing to build you a plant that's going to burn 70% of it's going to be human waste and 25% of it's going to be plastics.
Or
And then
or municipal waste.
propose something else, right? If that's what you're proposing, I want to see that plant. I don't want to see a plant that's burning medical waste at a hospital. I want to see, because the processes are, the pre-drying is all the problem. Schenectady, Tom, just talk about the pre-drying problem.
Yeah, I think they're, for that pilot, they had tried to figure it out internally and they couldn't because their unit, the equipment they were piloting, my understanding was required of, a very, very dry product, probably 90+%. And they were struggling with that. And I think that's how they got in contact with Stanford, because Stanford was making pellets anyway, probably in that range of dryness.
And the woman from Mrs. Burke, what's her name? She used to work for Stanford.
Yeah,
Didn't she
Burke
bring-
Wells?
Yeah, well, she's the one. Didn't she bring make that connection between Stanford and that pilot?
I'm not 100% sure, Scott, how
Okay.
that connection was made.
Okay.
It could have been through there because that would make sense of how Stanford found out. But
Yeah.
it just, even though their pellets were probably of the right dryness, the process wasn't right in Schenectady, and so first they had problems because the product wasn't dry enough. Then they got a dry enough product, and they still had processing problems.
I think in the questions you're asking them, I'm jumping back to green people, and it's really wow. On 17, expertise in the cruise industry, the ship industry, and agriculture may not easily scale up to full scale utility operations
Right.
because it's significantly smaller. And that seems to be the technology that they're hanging their hat on.
Yeah.
And I think at that point, the application is completely different because
Right.
within the cruise ship, right, you're trying to
Small.
take care of this waste that's produced constantly, and you're probably not as concerned about efficiency of it because you need to take care of it in a really small footprint. That's a different model than we would have of,
Right.
biosolids production.
In all of this stuff, it's not the equipment that's the problem. It's not the pieces and the parts. It's making the pieces and part work together.
Yeah.
Right. So just a simple, stupid example of this process. You all, I think most of you did the tour at the wastewater treatment plant, and most of you saw how the sludge gets dumped into the hopper at the treatment plant. Big tractor trailer truck comes in, boom, dumps it up, boom, it goes in, right? Creates lots of smells. We're in the process now of building a new facility that will contain that and control the odors and all that. That's one of our, we got $2.5 million of grant money from Congressman Larson on that project. But think about this. That's not going to change, right? So you're not going to slow down the trucks at the MDC. They're going to keep coming. So I have no idea. How do you inject 75% wet human sludge into a CTEC unit? I don't know. But they're only rated at 18 tons per day. So I don't know how you do that.
They do it in quads from what they.
Yeah, I don't know.
claim. I don't know.
I
what
don't know.
quad is. I
It's-
think it's 4 units. and
Why can't they build a bigger one?
I don't know. Well, their
they-
documentation say they
They
can't.
explain why they
Yeah,
can't.
the video explains
They
that.
said something about the heat exchangers.
Yeah, they explain that.
They try to do it and they try to do it in a mass and it doesn't get the same efficiency that it does. And they explain that to us.
The video explains that their documentation says they can't go any
I
higher
read
than,
a little bit about it too.
Yeah.
So I didn't understand. I thought,
yeah.
I mean, if the world wants bigger ones, I think they got to figure out how to make bigger ones.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But my
Well,
point
not
is the
if they had a
practical,
bunch of modules and they can get the same efficiency.
No, you know, Billy, the trouble is you're talking about, if you put 30 pieces of equipment in the plant, you're gonna have 30 pumps, 30 PLCs, 30 everything, which means, it's 30 times the maintenance versus 2. Yeah, I'm just,
Yeah.
Well,
It's not what you want.
why do we have 3 multi-hearth incinerators?
because one goes down, you got
Because
2, or you 2, but I'm just saying, you don't want 5, right? I don't think you'd want 5 sitting there, I would think.
We could permit 5.
We could burn it.
No, I said. for
yes, we
capa-
do.
You
We
do.
want 5.
We have
For
5.
capacity though, you don't want to run 5, though.
Well,
Well, but
Well,
I'm
there's-
just saying, that it's an efficiency issue that no one in the world is doing it at the same, if they're right, at the same efficiency that these guys are doing, although they claim they got a competitor in Europe that competes with them,
Mhm.
even though they use their heat exchanger.
I'm just saying, the idea of having these 30 things lined up in our back with 30 of everything seems to be, would be a disaster in my mind. I don't know. Maintenance disaster.
well, that's the question, right? It just comes down to show me where you're doing this at the recipe that you're proposing. I want to see a
So
plan.
I think we want to get them back here and we want to ask that question. You want to get more, you want to get more detail on they're claiming they got 2 processes. That's what we're looking at right now, not one when we started. We got a second one. And I think the second one is probably more promising, at least not promising, but operational at this point in time.
Get another question. On one of your statements in here, you said the incinerators work the same no matter how wet the sludge coming in is. Is that? Just because you're always drying it no matter what?
They have to be a certain mix.
Yeah, I think we were trying to clarify one of the questions,
Yeah.
and it almost seemed like the green vow, and again, LCI also didn't really understand the concept of a dry ton. And I think they had a little bit of, the misunderstanding was that the drier you get the sludge, they proposed, the more you could fit through it. And that's not
Is that the
correct.
case? No?
Because the
I would
air
think.
permit is driven by a dry ton, and the reason the deep does dry ton is a dry ton, is a dry ton, is a dry ton. Whether it comes in at 20%, 25, 30% solids, it doesn't matter. You have to calculate how dry it is.
It's
and then
doing,
you can
it's doing
only
the
burn
emissions
it.
not, but if it was drier,
Permit.
you could do more though.
No.
No, you
No.
still couldn't do
No,
it.
because
That's why I'm saying that-
No, I say, forget the permit. Assume and I know you can't, but
Yeah.
just technically, if you weren't worried about the permit, if it was drier coming in, you could incinerate more.
But you're saying you can't get more input.
Well,
but-
just remember that the equipment is only so big and
Right.
it can only do so much, right? So that's the limitation on the equipment, right? 5 tons an hour,
Dry tons an hour,
but
correct.
for 2 operational,
So if
2.5 tons per
it was
per
coming
unit.
in really wet, wouldn't put out, it'd be put out less, right?
Yeah, no, but remember, you just got to remember, so this is the confusion part, and we had this confusion with CTEC and with others.
Okay.
You got to understand dry ton, right? So dry ton is dry. Chemically, it is what it is. It's dry and it's 5 tons. When it's wet, you've got suspended solids in there. It could be 28%, it could be 27%, it could, so that varies. The percentage of solids in that wet varies. Deep doesn't care about that. They only care about the emissions that you're permitted. You're permitted, those plants cannot operate any more than 2.5 tons per hour per unit, total 5 tons per hour for 2 operational at any one given time. So as Tom said, whatever comes in, they don't care because they're in the plant. They are making sure that the only thing that they worry about is that when they get it to the dry percentage, they've met the goal of the permit. And that's why we don't sample, in wet, we're sampling dry. Because
But
it's,
you gotta get it
Then we
dry.
you gotta get it dry first,
And you
yeah.
got the emissions.
Yeah.
problem then.
Because you have some trucks coming in with cake, and it could be 72, could be 75.
Thing was coming in very.
Some
dry.
could be 100%. It's just,
I
like,
just didn't understand the question, because it
Yeah.
didn't make sense to me. Okay. It's a permitting
Making
issue.
progress. We've
Yeah.
been asking these questions.
I
Mr.
think the
Chairman,
important-
this is Commissioner Bush. Can I get a question? And you guys,
Commissioner. Yes,
Hey,
go ahead, Commissioner.
thank you. So one of the concerns that I've had right from the very beginning was the question about BTUs and the physics of burning and creating electricity. I was a little late to the meeting. I don't know if the discussion happened earlier, but I think Tom is probably the person that I trust more to explain what I'm trying to wrap my head around, that you can't create energy, more BTUs out of the same amount of substance that we're creating. So, is it possible for Tom to maybe elaborate? I know that he and I had this conversation after the last meeting. It just doesn't make any sense to me how they think that they're going to create more electricity than we're currently creating. And maybe if Tom could spend a minute or 2 or 5 kind of talking about that.
Sure. Like the brief discussion that we had, Commissioner Bush, was that there's an inherent value in any given product, a BTU value. So whether you burn a cord of wood, whether you burn natural gas, whatever your carbon fuel source is, there's an inherent value on that. And no matter what you do, because we can never do anything with 100% efficiency, you cannot get more value and energy out of a process than you put in your fuel source. So if you burn a cord of wood and there's 1 million BTUs in it, you cannot make 3 million BTUs of heat. That's the simple law of thermodynamics. You just simply cannot violate that. So that was one of the questions we had asked.
It's gonna.
How are you making so much more power than is inherent into the feedstock? You just, the physics don't work, the thermodynamics don't work. You can't operate at a deficit. You can't pull more out than you put in. It's not a credit card. There's an inherent BTU value, and it at 80%, 90% efficiency, that's all you can pull out of it. There's no 100% efficient process.
but even if it
And-
was 100%
yeah.
efficient, you
You can-
still aren't going to get
Correct.
300% out, right?
If you had a theoretically perfect system that operated 100% efficiently, you can only get out of it what you put in.
Right. So
You
what
cannot
you're
get
saying,
more.
yeah. So what you're saying is that we are currently getting a fairly high efficiency from what we're burning and turning into electricity. Right. What is the current efficiency percentage of our current process? Approximately.
Probably 85%, plus or
Right.
minus a little bit, but in that ballpark.
Right. So unless you add additional substance into what you're burning, you can't get more. You can't get more energy out of it. Maybe you're saying 10% more. But this process that they're talking about, that I've heard said over and over again at these meetings, is that they're somehow miraculously going to be able to generate a significant more amount of electricity than we're currently generating. I just don't buy that argument one bit. I just don't buy it at all. So
Well,
I'd like
it's a
to.
totally different technology that you're using. One's a molecular issue that what you're doing with gasification and pyrolysis, you're getting a higher heat.
No, but I think
Yeah, but a BTU is a BTU.
he threw out a stack temperature, which maybe he was wrong. Remember he said it was like 45 C. Remember was that wrong? I mean, so the point is, our stack temperature is not 45°C. There's a whole load of
Right,
heat.
that's the point. I don't know. I don't
So
understand.
I'm with you, you're probably 85%, but I'm just saying, his stack temperature was like, I didn't even want to ask the question. He said it was 45°C, that's not anything.
No.
So it was coming out cold, you're coming out hot, there's a lot of difference there. So maybe he's getting into the 90s, but I don't know.
But even if
Now
you
that-
were 99% efficient, if you put one BTU in, you cannot get 20 BTUs out.
No, I don't
Or
think you're a
two
fan of-
BTUs.
That's what the numbers are.
Or two.
Really? Oh, okay.
Well, I
All
mean,
right.
that's what's happening. They're burning at 1400 degrees centigrade, and you're burning at probably not even. What are you burning at?
About 13 to 1400 F.
If you're getting the 1400, not centigrade, you're getting to Fahrenheit.
Correct.
They're giving us in centigrades, and you're giving it to us in Fahrenheit. So you're burning significantly less heat. If they're generating, they can generate 1400 degrees centigrade, and you're burning at 1400
Nice.
degrees of Fahrenheit. They're burning much hotter. That
Yeah,
means
but they're
you
just
can-
going to burn the same amount of material more quickly, right? You still have the same amount of material. I apologize for interrupting. I apologize. It's hard when I'm not in the room. But it's the same experiment that we did in 7th grade when you burn the Cheeto over the little cup of water to find out what 1 calorie is. You can't get 2 calories out of a 1 calorie.
I'm not going to argue that, Rick, with you. Let's get these guys and let's ask them the question.
It
Right,
really
right,
comes
right.
down to it. Listen, it really comes down to, Tom is right. It's, if there's something that you do that
We're not-
defies the physics, then tell us, show us, right? And then we're happy.
Absolutely.
we're
That's-
happy
that's
to
all
look at it,
I agree with
Yeah.
you on that.
Show us. I took 4 courses of thermodynamics with Mr. Ernie Gardeau, our commissioner's
Did you
father.
pass the test?
I got straight A's.
Oh, okay.
So,
That's all I wanted to
so
know.
the answer is, it's odd to us, but just show us. But you got to remember something about MSW. We burn sludge because we have to, right? You got to get rid of it. We make energy as a side benefit. Same thing with MSW. You've got to get rid of MSW, and then you, as a benefit, you make energy, right? So forget about, I with Tom, I don't believe the numbers that, CTEC has said. They said their units are can handle up to 18 tons. We weren't sure if that's wet or dry. We've never got that clarification, but that that would generate 2 megawatts of power, 18 tons, right? We burn 20 tons of wet a day, an hour. We burn about 142,000 tons a year, and we only make 1.7 megawatts a year. So there's a problem here. How can you make 2 megawatts of power with 18 tons? I don't know.
And that's a question we should
We
ask.
need, just
We've
show
asked
me,
them.
right? Just we can argue all day long about their technology. Just show us.
But they've got a new tech, they showed us new patents that they had applied for that generate that kind of heat. Let's ask them how they do it. I don't know. I can't answer the question.
Yeah, just show us where you're doing this.
Yeah.
Show us where you're doing this at the recipe that you're proposing to us, whether it's the MSW, the 135,000 tons of MSW, or
Oh, I can see how they can burn.
the
MSW.
just show us, right?
Not at that temperature, though. In other words, they're not saying in the MSW process that they're burning at 1400 degrees centigrade. They're burning at something
know.
different from that. They have to be. I mean,
I don't know. I don't think they've clarified that, but it doesn't matter.
but
The answer is show us.
Because there is more, I would think, BTUs and tons of body parts versus tons of sewage, but not that.
You
much,
think?
though. I would think, right? Wouldn't you
Well,
think?
human body is 90% water.
It's dry.
Well, we were introducing natural gas into that process too. Get the heat, stabilize the heat and get it as high as we can get it.
Yeah.
How did that? So, I mean, they're introducing something too, but the differential between 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit is what they're burning at if they're burning at
What's going on here?
1,400 degrees centigrade. Isn't that what the conversion is, somewhere in that area?
Yes, but I think you would, if you heard from someone who, they'll can speak on it, the temperature doesn't matter. 1 BTU comes in, and if you had a really, if you burn a campfire out in the open, it's the same piece of firewood. But if you put it in a stove that's super highly efficient, you might get more heat out of it because you have a more efficient process, but the piece of wood is the same. It has the same BTU content.
But Tom, in that process of heat reclamation, you've got a heat exchanger, and the efficiency of the heat exchanger is critical on how much of that you transfer into the boiler
Correct.
to create the steam, and then
And they're never 100%. We have
maybe
heat
it isn't
exchangers at the
100%,
Hartford
but
plant.
someone's getting more heat out of that, and in the sense of the heat exchanger, that could be it.
Well,
Heat exchanger could be less efficient too.
unlike Scott, I didn't get A's in thermodynamics. So, I'd be really open to someone explaining that to me.
Yeah, I'd like to hear the explanation too. I'm not saying.
Yeah, we could argue all
You
day
know
long
a
about
lot
this.
more about it than I do.
Yeah, we need to
and
just
I'm
see
just
it.
saying, but I know how you create electricity and how you recapture heat and run it through a heat exchanger and to a turbine and everything
It
else.
it should be percentages better, not factors that better.
Yeah.
You're saying we're getting he's saying that.
So we got
Yeah.
a lot of information. But
Yeah,
I think we should reach out. Let's see what these people do when they come back. These are good questions. No one's got.
yeah, no.
And if anybody has any additional questions before we're going to send this back to them, anybody on the committee or anybody on the board or anybody submit the questions to John, and we'll incorporate them into this document that's going to go back to Reen.
And that, I'm sorry, and just to go back to CTEC, that slide that's up there should have been in this packet, so that will be part of this packet.
Okay. And then we've got to get in touch with them and start asking. some-
Yeah, so let's just talk process.
With.
I was just going to redirect the committee.
Okay. You
This
wanted to
is,
bring your sanity back? Okay. go.
no, this is Kelly Shane, Chief Administrative Officer. We have only, in interest of time for the committee, we did have another
Oh, yeah.
submission to review the questions for. That was LCI.
That was a short.
So I did want to redirect you to those questions in case you wanted to talk about that technology, and also the CTEC questions, since it was not on the agenda. I think that if there are other questions to add, we should add those, get
Another
those
thing.
from you, and then we will send through John, we will send those questions to CTEC and get those written questions back,
Okay.
and then share that with the
And
committee.
then Scott and Tom can talk in more depth with
Farmington.
Farmington.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
if they're thinking about doing something and they're ahead of us, that's fine. They could do
Yeah.
it, then we could.
Yeah, I mean, if a town, and I think, I'll pretend to remember what was said, but I almost thought that I heard CTEC suggest that in the discussions they're having with Farmington, that they're looking at, burning their plastics component of their MSW. I almost thought I heard that.
Yeah, I think they.
And I'm not sure if they were implying that they were gonna burn sludge, but they might be.
They did say. that
so
it was
we'll
gonna be-
find out what's their proposal, how far along in the process they are. And go from there.
So let's go into the second part of this
LCI.
LCI.
Yeah. So
Okay,
LCI
sorry.
is similar to green, except the complete opposite. LCI is the pre-dryer equipment, and so we wanted to talk to them and listen to them because they've got, again, a piece of the process, and it'd be interesting to hear from them as to, how do you do this, and how much energy and how much CO2 is generated and what the permitting processes are. This equipment is different, but similar to what they use in Stanford. The one thing we do know is we have in the state of Connecticut, we have a municipality that has this pre-drying process and makes pellets. And there's others across the country. But the problem that
They had a problem.
yeah, they had a problem because the gasification component didn't work. So now they're stuck with these pellets, and not just them. I mean, remember in Connecticut, DEEP will not allow, you cannot land apply sludge on farmland. You can't bury it.
Can't put it in a
In
landfill.
other states, you could up until the scare of PFAS, and now across New England, almost Maine banned burying and land application. So now people who have pellets, the Boston utility, it's not the city of Boston, but what's Boston? No, it's yes, MRWA. MRWA is similar to they like wholesale. So they serve about 60 communities, including the city of Boston. So they produce all of the water at wholesale rates. They treat all of the sewer at wholesale rates, and their contracts are with 60 towns. But they produce pellets and they could use land application in Massachusetts, and they would use it for fertilizer. But then when the PFAS thing happened, everybody's piling up with these pellets, and they don't know what to do with them. So it's becoming a major problem across the country, and it's a very, very expensive problem. So anyways, that's why we wanted to look at LCI and say, tell us what you do. Tell us, give us some facts around your technology and how it works and how much energy does it take to pre-dry, as we showed that schematic. The schematic shows to pre-dry about 9 tons an hour. Was it 9 tons an hour? That's 5,000
Not an
kilograms.
hour, I think.
Yeah, 9,000 wet tons an hour. It was 6 megawatts of thermal heat. So we're trying to get some comparative. We're trying to be able to say we can match these factual information from different manufacturers.
But pellets have no use. You can't burn it. What else can you do with it?
Well, we could burn it, but the problem is, in terms of, again, process, it's like a rock. Imagine throwing a rock into your equipment. So it's not something that Tom or Jeff wants in their system because it's a rock. It's like, it's a hard pelletized. So it doesn't fit the process. You want liquids to pump it, and you don't want to try and pump rocks, so that's part of our problem. And that's why the industry people started going down this path. A lot of people went down the path years ago of creating cake, the 25% solid, because it was cheaper to ship. And if you have a pure liquid, then you've got more trucking expenses, more weight, more expenses. So the industry changes over time, but in this case with the pellets, they got stuck because of PFAS. PFAS created a big problem. Yeah.
Okay, so we got questions here.
Yeah, questions. And if anybody has any other questions, we're happy to add them.
Just a test question. Nobody uses centrifugal drying or anything like that, so you don't have to burn anything? Is that just can't get good enough?
We have, how many do we have? We have
Half of those.
Before?
four. We have
Okay,
four.
so do it.
So
Okay.
our centrifuge dryers do
Does
exactly
Does
that.
that get you to your 90%, whatever?
No, the equipment is designed particularly for a given flow rate, so it's sized right for our facility. And we typically, the output is 25, 27%. We can go higher. We do not like to go lower, but it's consistently in that range. So between 25 and 30% is very normal.
Incinerators right from there, or do you do another drying process?
No, that's it.
That's it?
It's
Okay.
fed to the incinerators at
Okay.
25%
That's probably the cheapest way you can
solids.
do it then, right? That's probably the cheapest way you can do it versus something like.
Well, that's why, as Tom said, that's why we control. We don't care what you give us. You could be 28%, 25%,
We're gonna get
but
you-
we control what goes to the incinerator. That's the important part of the process.
Goes into the process.
It's consistent. No matter what it is, it's consistent. it's not, every town gives us something
What's it,
different.
60,
So,
60,
if this-
40?
What would be the advantage if we did this LCI to get us to 90%? Basically, you're saying there's no advantage based because of our permitting issue. right?
Correct. Like Scott said, we could not use a product with our existing infrastructure. And then, you have to look at the cost of what they also proposed.
I understand, yeah.
And that's just for the piece of equipment. We would have to modify the entire process to be able to move this very dry material into the
Those
incinerators.
Pipes, I mean, you have. ones
Right.
like
And,
that, yeah.
and then you have to keep in mind, the incinerators were designed around a certain product. They were not designed to burn 90% dry, sludge rocks. That's not what they were designed to do. So you'd have to then study, could that incinerator even handle that product?
But the reason why we put
Or
this in
the
front of us is
transfer of
because
it.
it's part of the process
For
that we are
gasification,
aware would
yeah.
need to be used for
Need for-
gasification.
Correct.
Or
So
understand.
that's what
I'm
this
just thinking about
technology is
how
used
we're
for.
doing it now, what we do, but I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah.
But why couldn't they use centrifugal dryers for gasification? Because you can't get there? Far enough?
I don't think you could get to
I don't know.
90%. Yeah.
You don't think you get to 90%?
Not on a centrifuge that I'm aware of, no.
You
What-
need,
what do
you
you
need
get at
energy,
now?
you need
60,
power.
40, isn't
need
that what
gas.
We get to 60-40 with this.
No, we
We're
get
at about
about 25%.
Maybe you
25,
do
30.
both,
Oh,
get
so
your
we're
stuff to,
getting-
maybe you get to
getting
75% with
15%
spit
better.
and then 20 more percent with
Right.
propane, whatever you
Let's
gotta
say
do.
60-40, yeah, right.
But in order to look at pyrolysis or gasification, you have to look at the drier component of it. And
I
that's why we're
understand.
asking you to
No,
look
no,
at it.
I
Because
understand.
whether you do it on site or off site, turn it into a pellet, not turn it into pellet, there's got to be some way to dry it
I understand.
first to a 90% product. So that's why we asked them to present.
But, well, I mean, whatever you do here, using electricity or anything else, I mean, that's where the future is, where we're going, is because we've got a problem with generation of electricity at an efficient level, rate, and clean. And, it's traditionally been, nuclear is the only thing you're really using that you don't have the discharge. And then wind and solar, and wind is hitting the
Yeah.
solid wall right now relative to costs. And that, what's happened in the market as they're anticipating, and look what's happening down in New London. What started off at 94 on the what's it, the state,
Here?
Yeah.
pier.
Yeah.
$94 million.
You don't want a contract for,
Just over 3
I
million.
want the contract for the pier.
You drive through Rhode Island. I had to go to Green Airport a couple of times the last couple of months. And you drive through Green Airport and you see these big windmills just stationary. They're not moving.
Well,
It's
they're in a different location.
Yeah, it's the
though, that
bad
they're talking
location.
about. They're further out, but
Yeah.
then they're finding out the cost of building them is
Crazy.
is going crazy, and they can't make the math work.
we spent MDC, we spent $300,000
Dollars on
studying wind
flow.
up in Pullbrook in the area. And there were some opportunities with that, but it was the infrastructure to get the transformers,
Get
the
electricity
switchgear,
to it, yeah.
to get that in the middle of the woods was,
And then take the
was-
electricity off. of
yeah,
it.
it was just-
Going back to this dryers, they talked about for paralysis or gasification work, we gotta have a certain dryness going in,
Yep.
or else we gotta add stuff
Yep.
to it.
Yep.
This won't get, a centrifugal dryer won't get to that level of dryness without adding stuff to add wood chips or municipal waste, something like that.
I mean, I don't know, Tom.
Just again, I kind of think these things through a little bit, but.
No, I think from what we heard from C-Tech is they need 90% dry to go into
You're
their
short, so
gas.
no matter what, you
So
can't get there.
you're not going to get there with a
Get it into the
centrifuge.
gasification
Yeah.
and pyrolysis system.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're still 15.
Yeah, that slide shows you that. They've been consistent. Everybody in the industry, pyrolysis, gasification, it's been very clear. We identify this in our white paper. You've got to burn 90, it's got to be 90%.
But I've never seen anybody say they're going through centrifugal dryers to get to 75%.
Right.
Then adding a little bit of sludge to
Right.
get to 90. I haven't seen
Right.
that anywhere. It seems like everybody's going full, adding stuff to make the
Well,
whole
the
way.
majority of the technology right now, I mean, as we said this before, gasification pyrolysis have been around for a long, long time,
Right.
right? So this is not new technology. What's new is trying to apply it to different
I understand, yeah.
industries. That's the difference. And what they've used it for in the past is for plastics. That's where, because it's already dry and it's already got a high BTU value. So that's where it really, it's where the industry, you know, meets the technology. Trying to burn water, as you know, is very difficult. How long does it take to sit over a pot of spaghetti and wait for the
Well-
water to all evaporate? Takes a long time.
Okay. Kelly, what's on the agenda
Yes,
for
Kelly
next?
again. I would suggest, so the meeting for the presentation, since there are two firms, is the 21st of September, which is in 2 weeks. We'd like to get these questions to those two firms as soon as we can. So if there's any questions to add, if we could send them to John
By Tuesday,
by Monday or Tuesday.
Monday.
Monday would be great.
Gives us a couple days.
Yep.
Some other.
And then I would suggest to make it not uncomfortable for both firms, because they will be talking about their individual technologies, that we make it a 2-hour meeting and have the first hour be the first firm, Green, and the second hour be the second firm, LCI, and not have them at the same time. Does that work for the
That makes
committee?
sense, yeah.
Okay. So that's how we'll set up their presentations. All right. Thank
An
you.
hour gonna be enough time?
For each? Yeah, I think so.
They've already got the,
They'll have the
Questions.
questions.
They'll have the questions more than a week ahead of time.
right.
Yeah.
So they should be able to articulate that.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further questions from either the committee or the other board members who are not here? Or Rick, I think you're the only one left on.
Yeah, I'm all set. The only, actually, just quickly, just a last minute thing. I would like to add, if we could, is there any leftover residual? I was talking to somebody in West Hartford, and they were mentioning that the gasification process does have a byproduct that is potentially hazardous, and I would like possibly some more information if possible on that. That's the only other thing I'd like to say. But this is a great
There's
meeting. Thanks.
a byproduct that's hazardous.
Yeah, there is. So we've identified that in our questions. I think that was one of our original questions, Commissioner. Deep has asked that very same question. The issue comes up in Green's proposal. We've asked that question. The good answer is you'll have a chance to ask Green the question and a chance to ask, we've already got the answer from CTEC. So
What was
there is a
CTEC?
I don't remember. Do you remember
I
what
don't
their
remember
answer
either.
was? Yeah, but we
It's
did,
the greater heat. I
yeah,
thought.
there is a byproduct left over. I have no idea if it's worse in the pyrolysis piece or it's worse
I
in
think
the,
it's in the gasification.
I don't know,
that comes out.
but there is a byproduct in both segments of the process. I know that,
You understood
Well,
it was
they
hazardous?
claim
though?
that they're
that-
claiming they're
You
using.
understand it was hazardous though? I didn't.
yeah, yeah, it's
What they're
hazardous.
claiming they can be used in cement filler for
I don't know.
cement and
So it's a question, I think, Deep raised this issue with us when we were talking about this. I don't know if Deep is on the call.
Gabrielle Fergone and Jameson Sinclair.
Jameson, are you there?
doesn't look like anybody's. Okay, so go ahead. So what?
Yeah, it's fine. So anyways, that's a question, like what is this stuff? Is it regulated? Isn't it regulated? We don't know. We're asking a question.
That's it for me. Thanks, guys.
One question, what was this? Yeah, was this on CTEC?
Yeah, those are the
Okay.
follow-up questions
Questions.
to send to CTEC.
Yep.
I
To
did
send to
out
them
twice
or-
the commissioners.
Okay,
Yep.
Um,
so those are all questions that are going on?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. That's good. Okay, is there, let me see. Back to my agenda here.
General public comments.
General public comments. Okay.
Judy Allen, West Hartford. My comments are only kind of tangential to technology, but I couldn't think of any other place to say it. I attended last night's board meeting and heard the presentation by Nick on community outreach. I read the flyer about odors and was surprised to read that styrene was naturally occurring in some foods. It didn't seem right to me that a petroleum product could naturally occur in anything. According to the National Library of Medicine, styrene can leach from certain packaging products and chemicals used to retain freshness on long journeys. But this is a moot point, as ingesting styrene is very different than inhaling it. Styrene is not naturally present in the air. So I have some suggestions for amending the flyer. Eliminate the section about foods. According to Sewer Service Company, I got the name wrong, who did emissions testing for styrene in the CIPP process, it raised certain questions for me that I think might be answered in the flyer. How long is a few minutes? Are we talking 5 minutes, 10 minutes? When is too long to be waiting for the odor to dissipate before calling a supervisor? What if there are children or others with asthma or other respiratory issues? How much advance notice are residents given? If I were a parent with a child with asthma, I might choose to take the child out for ice cream during this time. Would the odor be less for a person being outside rather than inside? How long does the whole process take? What is the impact for a business that might be in that area? What does it mean that the cloud will dissipate quickly when the process is complete? How long does the process take, and how long is quickly? I think it's important because the public needs to be able to anticipate what's going to happen. Could there be a contact person on site whose duty is to help affected customers with things like opening windows, getting them a fan if needed? I know I have windows that haven't been opened in a long time that I find hard to open. What about an elderly customer living alone who does not go down basement stairs to put water in a P-trap? Could there be someone to assist people with this? Does weather make a difference, like this hot, humid air with no breeze? I would think that would affect the ability of the styrene to dissipate. And then finally, the last paragraph, is the odor harmful to my family? There's a lot of, not a lot, but some technical information there, which maybe could be simplified for people, and include information about what a susceptible population is and the benefit and examples of avoiding any gases at all. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Further public comment? Not, the appropriate motion of adjournment is in order. Without objection, and adjourn. So you want to reach out?
Yeah, I will.